going to read today from Scald, which just came out a few days ago. And the book is divided into 3 parts, each dedicated to a feminist thinker that really informed my own thinking when I was coming up. The first one is Shulamith Firestone, and a lot of people don't remember her, but she was very, very radical, and interested in mostly reproductive rights of women, and believed, she would write these essays that women should just have their babies incubated over there, like in a glass ball. She was really it never happened, but really, really interested in the ways women's bodies are sort of, put on pause for a long time if they have children. The second one you may have heard of is Andrew Dworkin, and she was really interested in pornography in women and how women are subjugated through visual imagery. And Mary Daly, who was very interested in religion, particularly Catholicism and its subjugation of women. So that's pretty much how the book is set up. And the first poem I'll read is the first poem in the book. It's long, just so prepare yourself. It's like if you think, oh, this poem is going to take a while, it will. It's called How Deep It Goes, and it's actually dedicated to Shulamith Firestone. And she lived from 1945 through 2012. How deep it goes. I loved Shuli for writing that giving birth is like, quote, shitting a pumpkin, end quote, and that childhood is a supervised nightmare. It was easy for me to decide I didn't want kids. Reared on Andrew Dworkin, it was also easy to rule out intercourse. Can an occupied people, physically occupied inside, internally invaded, be free? When Dworkin died in 2005, an anchor on Fox made a crude joke, and Kathy Young called her a sad ghost that feminism needs to exercise. Some of us knew Dworkin was onto something, but Shulamith Firestone knew we'd probably shut it down. Feminists have to question not just all of Western culture, but the organization of culture itself, and further, even the very organization of nature. Many women give up in despair. If that's how deep it goes, they don't want to know. Which leads me to women who want children, which leads me to women who get 3 months parental leave and that's it. I'm talking about the US in 2015, but what about China, where foot binding was legal until 1912? Which leads me to human history. Plato was down with women's rights, as such a shift could alter the household and the state. And Aristotle thought women's work had no value. The Enlightenment was not so enlightened when it came to women, which leads me searching for historical blips of female equality. Spartan women got some glory if their sons were warriors. Those moms could own land and take care of estates. In 3rd century BC, Stoics believed that men and women should wear the same clothing, enter marriage not as a biological imperative, but as equals. Stoics had a good 800-year run until deemed pagan by Christians, all their schools were shut down. Quakers believed women and men were spiritually one and the same. Margaret Bell in 1668 said women's speaking justified, arguing for a female ministry. In 1782, before the word feminism came into being, Mary Wollstonecraft pled her case in the vindication of the rights of women. That marriage should be between 2 partners, not a father, husband, and a vain child-wife, who sacrifices her life to libertine notions of beauty. Which leads me to New Zealand in 1893, the first of many countries to give women the right to vote. The ERA put up a good fight. Birth control, 1975 declared International Women's Year. Which leads me to Russia's feminazi, Phyllis Schlafly, the moral majority, the post-feminist label, rape as genocide, 500,000 women in 1994 in Rwanda. Dworkin again. Can those without a biologically based physical integrity have self-respect? Which leads me to Rousseau and his natural law that certain men, white, are superior to women and all people of other races because men are rational animals, which leads me to men and their rational wars, which leads me to the animal kingdom. The lion that kills the cubs of its predecessor, the male seed beetle with his barbed penis, gangs of bottlenose dolphins kidnapping females, which leads me back to Schuli's despair. It's a good thing women are long-term thinkers because it's going to take a while until feminism is no longer a theory but a reality, says reluctant feminist Nancy Hopkins, cancer researcher at MIT, which leads me to plastic surgery or the death of feminism, which leads me to Pink's Stupid Girls, which leads me to fashion and Madonna and Naomi Wolf, which leads me to heterosexist privilege, which leads me to queer futurity, and Jose Esteban Munez, who dismisses the fight for same-sex marriage. Who would want to be part of such a corrupt system? Which leads me to women in combat. Why would women want to shoot anybody else, as they are so often victims of violence themselves? Which leads me to something like female futurity. Should women dismiss the fight for political representation since it's all a sham? Should women stop paying their taxes? Should they eschew money entirely and trade in their lipsticks and bras, their heels, their hair dye? Which leads me to the phrase, having it both ways, a phrase I hate, as men always have it both ways, always actually. Which leads me to the false binaries of gender, which one would think make feminism obsolete. Pop androgyny pretty much died with the careers of Annie Lennox and Grace Jones. I remember kids dressing up as Boy George for Halloween in 1983, which brings me back to Schuli's Pumpkins and a time of the Culture Club's beloved innocence. I prefer a nice cup of tea to sex, said the boy. My unproven theory, mainstream androgyny died with AIDS, gender bending was okay until it was labeled gay, until HIV, until toddlers with drawn-on eyebrows scared their parents. Which leads me to polysexuality, the trans world, cissexual assumption, and though not mainstream, pansexuality, which Shuli thought was coming and may be coming still, which leads me back to homophobia, xenophobia, anorexia, mania, which leads me to schizophrenia, from which Shuli suffered, which leads me to her delusion, people hiding behind masks made of their very own faces, which sounds poetic and apt to me, which leads me to mascara, which leads me to Louis Sass's definition of the schizophrenic as one who is acutely aware of the inauthenticities and compromises of normal social existence, which leads me to John Keats and his negative capability, which leads me to, of all people, F. Scott Fitzgerald, who, rephrasing Keats, wrote, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function." Which leads me, if that's how deep it goes, do you want to know, to you. And just to prove that I can write a short poem, I'm going to read you a villanelle. This is called Conceptual Villanelle. And do you guys know what a villanelle is? Some of you? Do not go gentle into that night, rage, conceptual light. That's a villanelle. So there's a lot of repetition. Conceptual villanelle. You were never born, never conceived, but for my tame imagination. My worst traits coupled with a lover's genes. His ugly temper, my food allergies. No chance to rebel, prodigal son, since you were never born, never conceived. No daughter to replicate my pet peeves, no Snow White to hate me in the long run. I never coupled with another's genes. My vanity and insecurity, his bravado and love of Tommy guns. You were never born, never conceived. No cravings, no maternity leave. My oven never concocted a bun made of my worst traits and a lover's genes. You'll never be told, grow up, you're naive. You'll never be taunted, never be shunned. You were never born, never conceived. I cursed all my dates, I buttoned my jeans. Thank you. This next poem is sort of about not about at all, but it started with my uneasiness with technology and smartphones and the whole, I still really can't quite understand them. And this poem is called On Occasion of Typing My First Email on a Brand New Phone. When I sign Denise, autocorrect suggests Denise Richards, which makes my ex-husband Charlie Sheen, which makes me a mother of 3 daughters and sometimes more, as I also volunteer to take care of the twins Charlie fathered with his 3rd wife, Brooke Mueller, while she's in rehab. In my new identity, I'm 10 years younger, but a lot skinnier, and I haven't read much. In my new identity, I get breast implants so I can be in Wild Things, for which I become pretty famous because of a sex scene with Neve Campbell in a pool. But after that, my acting goes nowhere, except for bit parts and my now canceled reality show, It's Complicated, which only runs for a year and for which Charlie calls me greedy and vain. Sure, I get to be in the world is not enough, but Entertainment Weekly rates me the worst Bond girl of all time. In my new identity, I still have a sister named Michelle. I'm still French-Canadian, raised Roman Catholic. I still get to be a writer, but when I'm Denise Richards, instead of poems, I publish a memoir, The Real Girl Next Door. I'm a New York Times bestseller, but deep down I know it's not because I wield a great sentence. In my new identity, instead of overeating, I get more plastic surgery and pose for Playboy when my marriage heads south, and I no longer feel sexy and just want to prove something. In my new identity, my mother has passed, but my father is still alive, going to the millionaire matchmaker to look for new love. Though I'm no genius, I'm generally respected because I don't badmouth anyone, even when I'm on Howard Stern. I repeatedly decline to talk about the restraining order or any of Sheen's public subsequent meltdowns. What's the point? Besides, I need to protect my kids. There aren't many famous Denises, and I wonder why my phone, if it's that smart, doesn't suggest Levertov. When I erase Richards, autocorrect still doesn't recognize who I am. As I try to resign, Samsung asks if I'm sure I'm just a plain old Denise. Might I really be Denise, or maybe Demise? Does your phone do that? Thank you. Almost everyone I try to email, they put a famous person's last name. So I'm trying not to take it personally, but I do.
What was the name of it, Denise?
This poem?
Yeah.
On the occasion of typing my first email on a brand new phone. So this next poem was born of finding out I had always thought that I was Gen X all the way. I identify as Gen X. I thought those are my issues. And then I was reading those little, I don't know, like little graphs that show you who you are. And then I found out that I was sometimes a baby boomer. And I felt so old. No offense, I was like, certainly I can't be a baby boomer, but I am. So this is sort of about grappling with feminism and just pop culture through generations. When I first moved to New York City, it was the 80s, and people would say, oh, geez, if you were here in the 70s or 60s, it was so much better. So I always felt like I missed out on something. So I'm saying to the young people in the audience, if I ever say like, oh, back in the 80s, just kick me. But this is kind of false nostalgia. All right, maybe your East Village was better than mine, a braided poem. You had hair on Broadway with naked actors, while we had the tame movie version with Beverly D'Angelo and Treat Williams. But you can never take the original Evita from us, with Mandy Patinkin and Patty Lupone, the former who now plays Saul on Homeland, the latter who appears in the 3rd season of Girls as a fake spokesperson for an osteoporosis drug. You are a baby boomer with a pension plan and tricked out Winnebago. We are Gen X, filled with anxiety about the dying seas, even though there's a 5-year span, 1961 through 1966, that's up for grabs. Those like myself, born in 1961, can claim to be the youngest of boomers, which is why the we sometimes includes you and other times not. We had Claire Danes as Angela in My So-Called Life, but Gen Y has Claire Danes as Carrie Matheson and Temple Grandin. Homeland and Girls are for their generation, though we watch too. Hulu pop-ups mock our age, Latisse to treat inadequate eyelash growth, Swiffer, Wetjet, and Astroglide. Gen Yers, also known as the Millennials, have a film version in which Madonna plays Evita and Antonio Banderas, Che. By the time Rent came along, I was too adult to get it, even though I was still living in Alphabet City, just like the characters. I thought the boring white guy narrator was exploiting his colorful neighbors, but hadn't I done the very same thing? My early odes were to Felix, the homeless man to whom I brought leftovers, writing myself as a secular Mother Teresa. We were jealous, we'll admit, when fellow Nuyorican poet Reg E. Gaines received a Tony nomination for Bringin' the Noise, Bringin' the Funk. But the play was so great, we saw it twice. We had Hairspray with Divine and Ricky Lake, but they have Hairspray with John Travolta and Nikki Blonsky. You had Baltimore riots, and they have Baltimore riots. We all have police brutality and real war. We had Vietnam, and they have Iraq and Afghanistan, for which women can enlist. Your brothers had shell shock, ours flashbacks, and now they have PTSD. We had Elton John's Philadelphia Freedom, but they have Elton John's Lion King. We had Cyndi Lauper's She Bop, but they have Cyndi Lauper's True Colors in a Kodak commercial, and later Kinky Boots. Cyndi Lauper danced the streets of the Lower East Side to make her Girls Just Wanna Have Fun video 2 summers before I moved there, when Madonna was buying her yogurt at the same bodega where I would later buy mine. We had Poverty and They Have Poverty, with the spin-off t-shirt, Girls Just Wanna Have Funs. By the time Glee and Smash came along, we were ready to join AARP. You had Quaaludes and LSD. We had coke and crack addicts on the stoop. You had political protests, and we had crime waves, one friend stabbed and another shot. They had Ritalin, Oxy, and Xanax. You had rent control, and we had slumlords. They stay home or sometimes move to Williamsburg or Red Hook. You had girdles and long-line bras. We had anorexia and bulimia. They have plastic surgery and Spanx. We had the Brady Bunch, and they did too because of Nickelodeon and the Brady Bunch movie. You had the Beatles, and we did too because of Dick Clark and Oldies Radio. They even have the Beatles through the Revolution and the Nike commercial. We had the Jackson 5's ABC and Michael Jackson's Thriller. They have Michael Jackson's child abuse allegations, his death by propofol, and hologram. We had Pippi Longstocking selling us self-reliance, and they have Wendy selling them burgers. You had braids, we had French braids, and they have hair extensions. All your Annies were white, and so were ours. Same with our Cinderellas, but they have Brandy and Kwanzaa Wallace. All our movie couples were pretty much the same color, except in To Sir With Love, but we never got to see Lulu's crush bloom, not because of race, but because of the student-teacher line, which couldn't be crossed. The night before I taught my first composition class, I was so nervous I got drunk at Area, a club you said was better in your days before AIDS and skyrocketing real estate. I danced with my friends and kissed a stranger. The next morning, he sat in the first row leering. He stood near me. Yeah, don't get drunk the night before you teach your first composition class. This is just to the TAs in the room. He stood near me in the elevator and told me I smelled good until I started taking the 5 flights of stairs. After a few weeks, he dropped out. Maybe as a courtesy, maybe he was bad at taking tests. Looking back at my rosters at Baruch, I taught 4 people named Jennifer Lopez. J-Lo would have been there in those years, but I don't remember anyone who seemed like her. Though does any celebrity truly seem like their famous image in real life? J-Lo is only 8 years younger than I am, but now my students can be 30 years younger or more. We both had moist patches of hair, but they had vajayjays and wax. 5 years before the Vagina Monologues, I let an editor change the title of my second book to The Woman with Two Vaginas, the name of one of the poems. He thought readers would think it hilarious, but soon I was in a mess, promptly banned and censored. My father had a nightmare. I was shamed on the Phil Donahue show, and relatives were calling him, asking where he and my mother had gone wrong. We had Phil Donahue, and they had Oprah. You had feminism, and we had feminism. But we can't say our feminism was better than theirs, can we? When we were in college, there wasn't even a term for sexual harassment. So there was nothing to do about lit professors, their pregnant wives at home, who tried to kiss us in their offices, or the bosses who squeezed our knees in break rooms, wanting to know why we didn't smile more. Your harassment was worse than our harassment, I'll admit, and it was even worse for our mothers and grandmothers born in the silent generation, and the GI generation, and the generations before that. All of us can project ourselves into the perils of Generation Z and the end of the alphabet. Just like all of us can imagine the witch who came before, stripped of her clothes, her head, legs, and pubis shaved as the patriarchy believed a woman braided a man's fate in her hair. She met her inquisitor walking backwards, so she couldn't give him the evil eye. Maybe your East Village was indeed better than mine, the avant-garde gasping its last breath when Kmart came to Astor Place. Her village had survived the Black Plague. Hard to believe, just 300 years ago, her children watched her burn at the stake. I wish I could have seen Hair on Broadway, those 20 seconds when actors stood naked behind a scrim, chanting beads, flowers, freedom, and happiness. I've always wanted to step back, but just a little bit, in time. Wait, just a piece of ice. This is the last poem I'll read. It's inspired by a terrific poet, Portuguese poet named Adélia Lopes. And I was able to go to Portugal a couple of years ago, and I went to this lecture on contemporary Portuguese poetry, and I fell in love with her work. And there are only 10 of her poems translated into English. So if anyone knows Portuguese and wants a good project, I'm telling you, she's fantastic. She was really inspired by Anne Sexton, so a lot of her work is Anne Sexton-esque, but hilarious. So anyway, this poem is called Fornicating, and this is Adélia Lopes's quote. Such a beautiful day, and I'm not fornicating. Fornicating. I have goosebumps from the breeze coming into the window, which is a kind of fornication, but who am I kidding? A breeze is not even a kiss, especially a breeze strained through a screen. I would have a better chance out on the street where I could perhaps meet someone who wanted to fornicate with me, or someone like me, and I could pretend, I suppose, even to be someone else, give a fake name so the man would never find me again. It is a little scary to say to a stranger, hey, do you want to fornicate? Especially if you are a woman and you want to fornicate with a man. What kind of man would say yes to such a request? Maybe a violent one, maybe no decent man at all, since the request is pretty bold, and I suppose I would look crazy. Men are leery of crazy women, and I can't blame them. I could promise a man that I wouldn't stalk him or call him ever, that I am just in it for the fornication. But would he believe me? Even I don't really believe me. Because what if the fornication was a success and I woke up the next morning, another beautiful day, and I wasn't satisfied with just the memory of fornication and wanted another round? Or what if it was lousy outside, and since I'd given a fake name, insisting I didn't want to know his, I had to look for a new fornicator, this time while lugging an umbrella. This time I could look for a woman with the same sad look I have when I want to fornicate. And if she agreed, we could step out of the rain into her apartment. It might not be as scary as approaching another man, or as big a leap over a puddle. Ann Sexton wrote, "Once I was beautiful, now I am myself." Then Adelia Lopez wrote, "Once I was beautiful, now I'm myself." Then I wrote, "Fornication is for all the beautiful and unbeautiful selves on both beautiful and unbeautiful days." Not that I knew what I meant. It's just that sometimes it's easy to feel unbeautiful when you have unmet desires or embarrassed that you have such desires at all. I once wrote about a lover who would pet his cat more than me, and my friend said, "This poem is too vulnerable. I feel as though I should throw a coat over this poem." She was right, of course, and I tore it up. I only remember it today because in her author's photo, Adelia Lopez holds a cat. I am allergic to cats. The lover had to wash his hands those many years ago before he could touch me. Kurt Vonnegut wrote that every character needs to want something, even if that something is only a glass of water. I want to fornicate. I get up from my chair and press my face against the cool screen until there is a dirty grid on my cheek, as though I've slept in 50 tiny beds. Thank you.